Good afternoon. My name is Chris Adam with Youth Pleasure Employers, and I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah, who's speaking to us on behalf of Ward Gethin Archer, now known as WGA going forward. So hello, Sarah. How are you this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I'm not too bad. Thank you for giving up your time to speak with me this afternoon. And I guess my sort of first question has to be, can you tell us a little bit about the business and what it is you do?
Yeah, so we are a firm of solicitors, although we have lots more different types of lawyers than solicitors now. There are various different ways of training to become a qualified lawyer these days, rather than there used to be only one way, which was to become a solicitor, whereas now there are lots of different ways. We offer all sorts of different legal services. We are a full service legal firm. The only legal service that we don't offer is crime. We have 8 offices based across East Anglia. So yeah, we are your local solicitors. We've got lots of local branch offices. We think that we're a very community friendly firm. That's what we hope to be anyway.
No, that's definitely how you're coming across to me. And I'll ask you about the different routes in, as you touched on in a second. But one thing I wanted to touch on there, it's an interesting point you make, is I'd say a lot of people's views of a sort of a solicitor's office. You know, you said you don't do crime there, but is what they sort of see on the telly, if you see what I mean. It is a high bustling, busy environment, you know, with lots of different things going on. So how, you know, what is that kind of day-to-day environment like in comparison to what people might think it might be like, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, so particularly a lot of clients that come in are kind of a lot of the time quite apprehensive about coming in, because they think that, I don't know really what they think we're going to be like, probably people with 2 heads, I think. But you know, at the end of the day, we're just normal people like you know, this is just our job, you know, we are normal people still. So my day-to-day life, I am a family lawyer. So I deal with divorce and separation and children issues. So I spend a lot of my day seeing clients in the office, finding out what their problems are and how I can help them. I spend probably 1 or 2 days a month, probably on average, at court, when court proceedings are issued in relation to normally divorce finances, or in relation to a children matter. I also spend a lot of my day typing emails, typing letters, on the phone to clients. So a lot of my job is very much office based.
And you touched on a little bit there, and we can focus specifically within your area if it helps, is how do I put it, in the different routes into the field. Obviously there's there's an academic requirement that's needed there that, you know, a lot of people pick up along the way, but what's the kind of what kind of soft and emotional skills do you need? So you mentioned about your area there with family, and obviously, you know, I guess that can be, you know, quite emotional, whether it be sort of from clients, or you must see all kinds of stories and situations. So for someone who's maybe looking to get into this field, you know, how important is sort of, I guess, for use of a better phrase, emotional control in sort of dealing with what you deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, so particularly if you want to be a family lawyer, for example, then you know you will need a lot of emotional control. But you know, there are lots of different types of law, and depending on the type of law that you do, will obviously there'll be different issues that come before you. So, for example, if you were to do property transactions, they're quite fast-paced normally. You'll have a lot of client contact, because you'll be, you know, clients will be ringing you, you know, finding out the status of their purchase or their sale. So you need to be able to deal with that kind of fast-paced environment. Whereas something like commercial property, maybe you probably have less client contact, and they're more kind of professional commercial clients that you would be dealing with. So obviously you won't have really any emotive issues there to deal with. It will just be the transactional side of things. Wills and probate, again, is another area where you have a lot of client contact. You'll be seeing generally a lot of elderly people. You know, as a wills and probate solicitor, you may have to go into hospital and see someone that's, you know, in the very end days of their life to help them make a will. We call those a deathbed will. Again, in which case, you know, that can be quite an emotional time. So yeah, I mean, I think depending on, you know, your strengths, you know, there are different areas of the law which will suit you, really.
And was it that variety and the different areas you could go into to sort of play to different strips one of the things that attracted you to work in the sector, full stop?
I think that I always knew that I wanted to be something that would help people. I like to think that's what I do. You know, as a family lawyer, I help people in a very difficult time of their life, and help them to come out the other side when hopefully, you know, things have been resolved, and you know, hopefully they're happier than they were. Obviously, they're not always, because you know sometimes it's not their decision that the relationship has come to an end, and they've just been the one that's had to deal with that decision that's been made by the other person. But yeah, I like to think that I help people. So that's why I went into the being a family solicitor, really.
If there's a skill that you use in your day-to-day role that maybe is a skill you didn't expect that you would use, you know, when you started getting into the field, or maybe you've realized in recent years, like, oh, that's something actually that plays a big part in this role, what would you say that skill is?
I guess it's one of the things, anyway. It's probably managing clients' expectations. I always say not all lawyers are created equal. There are some lawyers out there that you know will promise clients the moon on a stick, you know, and that's not practical. You know, if you promise a client the moon on a stick, you're not going to get the moon on a stick, and you're only going to end up with a dissatisfied client. Whereas actually, if you're honest with the client at the outset, then you know you say, this is the legal position, this is where we are, this is what you can expect. You're not promising them anything that they're not going to get, and that they are generally happy at the end of the day, although not all clients do like honest advice, I will say.
And it's interesting you say that, because I think that links nicely into what I was going to ask next, which is, as I say, we'll touch on the academic and the different routes in just a second. But if we look at those kind of core soft skills that you're using on a daily basis, you know, sort of the ability to communicate with people, as you say, managing expectations there, how core, you know, how important is that sort of core set of personable skills, you know, sort of in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
It's probably one of the most important things, because obviously, as a family lawyer, I get clients from all walks of life come to see me, you know, with various different you know, levels of ability. So it's really tailoring what you are saying to it, and saying it in a way that the client can understand. So yeah, I guess it's a kind of, you know, assessing what level the client is at and tailoring your advice so that you can ensure that they've come away from seeing you having understood what you've said.
And I guess that goes back almost to your previous point, whereas when some people walk in the door, maybe they don't know what to expect, maybe they're a little bit scared about the house scenario. So as you say, that ability to communicate effectively and manage their expectations actually sort of stops them portraying you as that two-headed monster that you're on about.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I always say, you know, I want to put them at ease. You know, they need to feel comfortable talking to me. You know, and a lot of clients, they often say to me, "Oh, you know, I feel like you're a therapist to me as well." You know, because, and I guess that is part of my job. You know, because I listen to what's been happening to them, and you know, I get a lot of people that cry when they come to see me. So again, it's managing your own behaviour when that happens, because obviously that can be in a very emotional time when you've got someone sat in front of you telling you an upsetting story, to know to regulate your own emotions. But I think for some people, you know, that's the first opportunity that they've had to tell their full story to someone, because perhaps they don't want to tell their friends or their family exactly what's been going on, perhaps because they're embarrassed. You know, particularly some people don't like crying in front of, you know, people that they know. So yeah, I do get a lot of people that cry when they come to see me. Yeah, and they do tell me that they feel like I'm their therapist as well as their lawyer. So that is an additional skill that I have acquired.
That, you know, you paint an image there of sort of, you know, what some of the, you know, more intense, challenging days look like, and actually leads quite well onto my next question, which is, if you had to say in a nutshell, in your role, what do the good days look like, and what do the challenging days look like?
That's a good question. The challenging days are when, particularly when in a divorce situation where there's not enough money to go round, and it's, you know, there's one pot that previously was manageable because they were living together. There's still that one pot that's now got to support them, you know, living separately, and the challenging days are trying to find a way to make that work, because you know there often isn't enough money to go round, you know, and people that were sometimes in a property with a mortgage, you know, have got to go into rented accommodation because, you know, there's not enough money for them each to go and buy somewhere else. So that's hard. That's, um, you know, the good days are when you find a solution that, you know, helps everybody, and is a good solution for everyone and is a fair solution for everyone.
Yeah, no, I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head there in terms of, and it goes back to our sort of previous point about sort of knowing when to control the emotion and and remember the role you have there, which I guess for a lot of people, some people would probably hear about that and you would probably struggle with it, but as you sort of touched on there, it's a skill set you get taught and you develop over time. And the next question we're going to ask in sort of two parts. The first part I'll ask is, can you talk about a little bit about the different routes in, as we touched on earlier, sort of into this kind of career path? And the second part of the question is, you spoke about your sort of motivating factor for working in the sector is you wanted to help people. Obviously, you could help people in lots of different ways. So what was the sort of point where suddenly this career path seemed like the most attractive one to you, if you see what I mean? Was it at a certain age, or because you experienced something, or what made you suddenly think like, what, I think this is the career path that's going to tick the most boxes for me?
So I'll answer that question first, because that's an easier question to
Yeah.
answer. So I either wanted to be a lawyer or a teacher when I was growing up, and I actually did some work experience in a school, and I came home every day with the worst headache I've ever had. So that quickly decided for me that being a teacher wasn't going to be the career for me. And I then did some work experience in a solicitor's firm, and I did a couple of sets of work experience, and I really enjoyed it. So that's why I decided to go on to university and study law.
Oh, fantastic. And that's one of the routes in, I guess, as well. So university, as I guess that's what most people think is the most obvious route in, is go to university, study law.
Yeah. So that, I mean, there are so many, I don't even know if I know them all these days, so many routes into law, but basically one is to go to university and study law for 3 years. You then have to do another course. At the moment, people do a course called the legal practice course, and then they have 2 years training in a law firm as a trainee solicitor, and at the end of that they then qualify as a solicitor. That has always been the most traditional route. This year is the last year, I believe, that they are actually doing the LPC. They've introduced something new called the SQE, which is the solicitors qualifying exams, which is basically where you have to be working in a law firm and you have to have 2 years of qualifying law experience. But basically, instead of doing the training contract, which is 6 months in each department, you can just have 2 years of law work experience, basically, and you then sit some very difficult exams, and you qualify as a solicitor. We've got some people here doing them at the minute, and they are very difficult, I will say. That's a fairly new thing that's come out in the last couple of years. The other way, or another way, is that you can do an apprenticeship. So normally you would start with just, well, there are various apprenticeships that you can do. Some you can do with just A levels, some you can do with a non-law degree. You can have a non-law degree and then do a conversion course and do a law degree and then qualify as well with the SQE. So you can become a member of the Chartered Legal Executives, which is basically where you do six years almost worth of exams, but you do them usually whilst working at a law firm. But yeah, there are various different ways that you can qualify these days. As I say, I'm not sure I even know all of them, because I hear new ones every day and think I didn't know that one existed. So yeah, what I would say is for anyone wanting to know more about that, the first step really is to get some work experience in a law firm, and see if that's for you, and speak to them really about routes particularly that they might offer to qualify. I mean, as a firm, Ward Gethin Archer will usually pay for training if we've got a staff member that wants to progress their career and start to do their exams. If they've been with us for a period of time and we think that they are a good candidate, we will normally pay for their exams, and a lot of firms will offer that as well. So
So firstly, thank you for going into all the different routes there. I know it's a sort of, it is a big question with lots of different routes, but as I say, hopefully anyone watching this video, they might have found out about some new routes there, or maybe, even if they've just learned that there's more than just, as I say, maybe the old-fashioned idea of that it's just go to university, study law, and that's your only route in. So that's fantastic. So that leads me on to my penultimate question. So my penultimate question is, you touched on it there, like the importance of maybe getting some work experience in a local law firm. So my question really is, and again, sorry to give it to you in two parts. The question would be, if a young person was applying for work experience in a law firm, what kind of things can they put on their application or their CV that would maybe set them apart? Because it's going to be probably quite competitive, especially if you've got lots of people and only a few local law firms. So from your point of view, what would be the kind of factors that would make someone stand out to get that experience? And if they couldn't get that experience before, maybe whether it could be going to do an apprenticeship or going to university, what other kind of experiences can they get that you think that actually still might help them on this career path?
So lots of citizens advice bureaus. There are lots in the county. I'd probably suggest going and getting some work experience with them. They have legally trained people there. They do offer paid roles as well. I do know one lady who did her 2 years qualifying experience with the Citizens Advice. She was a paid advisor. She then utilised that experience to do her SQE exams, and she then qualified as a solicitor. So that's a good thing to get into if you can, even if it's just going in observing or being trained as a free advisor. That's a good thing to get into. The criminal courts are public forums. You can go and, watch cases in there. The court actually have a kind of pupil scheme as well, where you can go in and formally sit in with the judges, and the judges will mentor you. So again, that's a good thing to get into. I would say if you are writing to law firms for law experience, I would say tailor your cover letter. Say why you want to work for that firm, show that you've taken some time to research the firm, how many offices they've got, where their offices are, what sectors they offer, and that matches what you're interested in. The ones that are kind of just, I would like some work experience, here's my CV, unless you've got really good grades, but you're probably not likely to get very noticed. Whereas if you can show that you've actually taken an interest in the firm, that's more likely to get you much further down the process.
Thanks for that. Sometimes those little inside pearls of wisdom that you've got there, really provide the sort of the advantage to someone that, as I say, they might not previously have. As you say, I think a lot of people sometimes, if they're putting lots of applications out in bulk, as you say, might suddenly become a little bit more generic and not tailor it. So, it's really interesting to hear about that. It leads me on to my final question, which for some people they find the absolute toughest. And you've touched on, sort of the kind of thoughts that young Sarah had, that sort of led you down this career path. So my final question to you, Sarah, would be, if you could go back and give your younger self some career advice, so taking into account, maybe it be successes you've had, mistakes you made and learned from, what's the one piece of career advice you would go back and give to your younger self?
I don't really know. I was made a director here when I was 30, so and I was probably one of the youngest directors that they'd ever had. So I think I was quite well advised at all times. When I was choosing my A levels, I knew to choose good academic subjects. So your English, your science, your maths, your history, your geography. If you are a GCSE student that is looking at further education, A levels really are preferred. That's what we will look at, because obviously there are a wide variety of BTEC courses and that. Honestly speaking, they're not as highly regarded as A levels. A levels are really what we kind of look for, and in good academic subjects as well. Again, if you go into university, that's what universities will look at as well. You really need to be getting good grades in your A levels if you go into university. But yeah, I would just say really study hard, get those good grades, get some work experience. If you can, Gethin are going to begin to offer a work experience scheme in the summer that people can formally apply for. Lots of firms do accept people for work experience, so just get as much experience as you can, because that will really make you stand out.
And just to make sure I can give it the ample plug, so if someone watching this was interested in the scheme in the summer, where would they find the details for it?
So the information will shortly, although it's not at the moment, because it's only something that we're formalising at the moment, but it will be on our website this year.